Okay, so we're dealing with how to do ideally what a two actor scene is. So you've got two different actors, and this is ideally what every single acting scene should be like. You've got, and this is going to lead very quickly to the reality that vulnerability is clarity in acting. Now, my name is Simon Blake. I've watched over 8,000 acting classes. Yes, classes. I've got over 6 acting books. I got one book, Reasons to Knock on the Door. Fantastic, over 2,300 ways to be able to knock on a door for improvisation. Look, all kinds of stuff. Look, acting is going to be something that's this ideal way of working where you can make your adjustments to get the best efforts and results for what you're working on and for your energy of what you're putting into your acting. And it involves this element that it's very difficult to well, it's not difficult because we know how to, I can figure it out. I help you step through it. And this is the topic of vulnerability in acting. Ideally, you want both actors to be vulnerable to both each other and also to the scene. Now, this is a big request for anybody on an acting scene, doing an acting scene on a film set, because most times you're going to deal with egos, and you're going to deal with all sorts of other elements in acting. But if you get through this and you understand that there's a vulnerability aspect in yourself and how to be able to use it to be able to intrigue and allow the audience to actually carry a ride, an emotional roller coaster with you every single time you do an acting scene, that's what I can teach you. That's what this is that we're discussing. We're able to leap forward and jump over these obstacles that most actors, I mean, literally, I have a privilege of watching so many different people on acting, and I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of names, hundreds. Oh, I don't know, I think it's over hundreds. So dealing with acting process to be able to do this. First thing we have to understand this is that vulnerability is clarity. The more vulnerable you are, when you can adjust your vulnerability level in acting the right way, you're going to be activating your emotional preparation in the emotional range of which we know that we have to get a resonance or a frequency of. We get that emotional range activated ourselves. Then we've got to be able to actually add the element of vulnerability. I do this every single time I work. It will increase the connection from yourself to the other actor. Now, this is one part of it. Now, we're going to work so that we have both actors. We're ideally going to have both actors in a state of the vulnerability where they need each other within a circumstance of which they're involved. They're in another circumstance. They need one each other, and they also are vulnerable to each other, and they're also vulnerable to the circumstance. That's the ideal acting situation, which is incredible, because once you understand that, then you know that you're never being caught acting or caught performing and acting or caught off guard, because you're going to always be connected to the other actor, because you know that you've got that sparked in you. You've got the one of the emotion sparked, then you've also got the vulnerable aspect sparked. So both actors have to surrender each of them vulnerable, so the audiences can then experience that vulnerability, and they can experience that emotionality, and they can experience both of the actors separately as they both go through those experiences. This is critical. This is, honestly, to be honest, it's quite basic, but it's exciting to be able to help people discover that, because I've seen a lot of people, they haven't figured that out yet. A lot of people. Now look, when we're working with the actions of an acting scene, let me hold on one second. We are understanding that the byproduct of the vulnerability in our acting is both honesty and authenticity. So we're gonna trust that by being vulnerable, and we don't mean, like, we'll define what vulnerability is enough so that you know that look, if you're steaming mad, you're upset, you're having an emotion of despair or regrets or elated giddiness, that's all going to be an emotional current that you have. That's going to be part of the emotional current that you activate. And I always teach that emotions are deeper than feelings. Feelings are often fleeting. I can't even tell you how many. I've seen, I think it's over 10,000 actors on stage. It's been, and now many of them have worked more than once, depends on how many exercises. I have no idea how many exercises. I know it's 8,000 acting classes. So it's a lot of work. And I've seen actors get their emotion, and they don't get the emotion, they actually just get the feeling, and they go to work, and then all the feeling dissipates. So when we're adding the element of vulnerability, that's going to actually help the feeling turn into an emotion and be able to have the emotion in the interaction between the two actors, and you're going to be involved more, and the connection is going to be what old school style is called gut to gut. This is going back to Sanford Meisner in Neighborhood Playhouse in the 40s, 50s, 60s. So look at that and understand that's the gut to gut. That was the actors in New York. They used to always say, "Oh, you had to go gut to gut." That was what they were talking about. They're talking about the ability to activate the emotion at that level, so the emotion's actually going from one emotion to one actor to the other emotion to the other actor. However, what would often lead to conflicts in the classroom, especially even the acting exercises and also acting scenes, is that the lack of vulnerability. The vulnerability aspect is what's going to keep you from it's going to keep you from isolating yourself in your acting. It's going to keep you from trying to overpower the other actor. You're going to be able to be in a situation where you're vulnerable with the other actor and vulnerable enough with your circumstances that you're not going to overpower it, and you're not going to overpower them. And that's going to be this guiding line that's going to be able to really, 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 really healthily help you step over a lot of obstacles. I mean, a lot of obstacles. So if you want to complain about the other actor, which comes up sometimes, then do it in the exercise. And I will tell you right now, if you want to complain about the other actor and not be vulnerable to the other actor's experience and be able to include the other actor's experience in your work, then I will tell you that the acting scene itself will teach you that lesson. I don't need to teach you that lesson. You will learn that from the experience of doing the scene. And then you will learn how to be able to adjust yourself so that you can have the best of both worlds. And that's a mouthful. So doing the acting scene will teach you that lesson. Now, how to be vulnerable. Now, how to be vulnerable in acting is going to be, it could be as simple as like an example, a reason to knock on the door. You've come over for a reason. The best reasons to knock would be the ones that leave you with an openness where you have a bit of vulnerability. I don't know, maybe you've gone on a hot date and your date's left their purse or their wallet in the car, and you've knocked on the door to return the wallet. Now that's a moment of vulnerability. That's going to make the scene better because now you're at the whim of the other actor. It doesn't mean that you're giving away your willpower completely, although it could. It depends on the scene, and it depends on the acting, how things unfold in the acting. And if it unfolds that any direction, you'd go with the direction of how that unfolds. See, you're in a situation where you're incredibly engaged with the other actor, and you're giving yourself a vulnerability that you want to be more engaged with them. And this is going to supersede so many problems. You're going to, instead of, you're wondering, worried, you're up in your head. Most typically the actors, the typical thing, which is normal, the normal thing. And this, people will try and activate a feeling, and then they'll question whether they're connected to the other actor. When we work this way, we know that we're connected to the other actor. We know that we can trust our instincts and our impulses because they're rooted and grounded in emotion, which is the whole reason why the emotion was taught by many of the greatest actors, dealing with going right back even to the 1800s. There's a lot of incredible ways to be able to work with acting technique. And any acting technique that gets your emotion involved, which is not just a fleeting feeling, you're going to get your emotion involved, is one that's worthwhile for you to study. So you're going to look at that, how vulnerability, that type of vulnerability, the vulnerability where you are still adjusting and flexible. And that's the type of vulnerability that we're talking about here. We're not talking about pleading. I mean, pleading could be something that would be done in a scene. That would be something that would be directed typically from an acting scene. If so, then you've got to be pleading, but then you also want to do your acting technique of adding that vulnerable thing. Then that's going to bring that attraction between you and the other actor stronger. Now, vulnerability is the innocence to have the experience. This is incredible. Look, I make notes before doing these, so I'm telling you, this is one of my notes. One of the things I brainstormed. Vulnerability is the innocence to having an experience. Critical, critical, critical. If you're not willing to be vulnerable, then you're not willing to actually have a scene. That means that you're not going to actually have something unfold. It means that you're not going to actually expand. You want to be able to emotionally expand in your acting work. You can achieve all of this stuff with just the proper adjustments. Once you do the proper adjustments, you're guaranteeing that you're going to have an experience, and you may there's a lot of things to this. So this is great. So the other thing here is winning the attention of the scene is by being vulnerable. Many people think that you win the attention of the scene by being loud. Um, Being loud is not going to win the attention of the scene. The audience is not going to look at just the loudest actor. The audience is not going to look at the actor with the biggest gestures or the movements. The audience is going to not look at what you might think. The audience is going to look at the vulnerability and who's having the greatest experience. If you want to have the greatest experience, that means you're going to be in a place where you're connected to the other actor through some sort of vulnerable aspect. Now, give yourself over to the experience so the other actors and the audience can actually both have an experience. So you're in a bit of a quagmire. You're putting yourself intentionally in a quagmire. You have a problem. You've got a situation where you're delving into. You're literally in a situation where you put yourself in a healthy vulnerability where you have to be able to make adjustments to be able to get through the experience. Now, that's acting in one sentence. And it's a long sentence, but it's good because we're dealing with the ability to be able to find what works for us to be able to activate us at an emotional level, visceral level. We're dealing with a visceral level. We're not dealing. I don't mind if you're any technique that's going to be able to activate your emotion. You should need to be free enough with to be able to make adjustments to the other actors, so you're not stuck. You're adjusting yourself to be vulnerable, but you're adjusting yourself so that you can be able to be responsive, so you're able to respond to the other actor based on your connection to them. Now, give yourself over to the experience. When you give yourself over to the experience, this is what allows the audience to actually be able to have and share an experience by watching your work. That is incredible. So, look, reasons to knock right here. Reason to knock at the door. 2,300 reasons to knock at a door. This is vital. I suggest that you do about 2 hours a week practicing knocking. It might be 1 hour a week. Depends on how busy you are working on other things. This will help train your acting, and you can just do this as the reasons, and then later on you can add the emotional preparations. The emotional preparations books are 3 volumes of emotional preparations, over 700 emotions that are viable, good, strong emotions to be able to work with, that will literally be able to, you can concentrate on those emotions, activate those emotions within those emotional ranges. I look at everything flat out, every single thing. I have ascertained so much work in acting. I have done so much studying of acting, and I have ascertained that every single thing boils down to emotion. Now, I know that conflicts a certain thing with other acting teachers, but here's the reality. It doesn't. If you look at it in the right way, it actually complements every single acting teacher's technique when you look at and start to break down the emotional life of your work and how to be able to have activation. Emotional preparation is the last step of emotional preparation. The way I teach it is making sure that you activate your emotion to make it alive and genuine and involved. And that means that you're going to be viscerally living and feeling the experience. Thanks a lot. Ask me some questions if you need to. Thanks a lot. Bye.